Before we start, I want to say that only 1% of you are subscribed. Please subscribe because when we reach 1,000 subscribers, I will post a special video for you. Jack stepped through the airlock of the Stargazer, a bulky duffel slung over one shoulder, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar environment. The vessel was sleeker and more advanced than anything he'd worked on back on Earth. Alien symbols blinked across panels and holographic displays hummed softly, painting the dim corridor with a wash of light. He was greeted not with a handshake, as was customary back home, but with a nod from a tall, slender being with shimmering skin. "This is Lyra," introduced a voice from behind him. Jack turned to see Captain Vex Thor, the commanding officer of the Stargazer, an imposing figure whose deep blue eyes seemed to pierce right through him. "She's my second in command, and she'll show you around." Lyra extended a hand, or what seemed to be a hand, with slight hesitation before speaking in a clear, accented voice. "Welcome aboard, Jack. Humans are rare on vessels like ours. You must be quite exceptional." Jack managed to smile, still adjusting to his surroundings. "Thanks, I just fixed things. Where do I start?" "Let's give you a tour. The engine room will be your main station," Lyra said, leading him through the corridors. As they walked, Jack observed crew members of various species. Some paused to stare. Others nodded respectfully. They stopped outside a massive door, which slid open with a hiss. Inside, the engine room buzzed with activity. Tools floated in zero gravity, and crew members maneuvered around with practiced ease. "This is Tikril," Lyra introduced a stocky figure with green, leathery skin. "He's our lead mechanic." Tikril eyed Jack skeptically. "A human engineer? Never worked with one. Hope you can keep up." Jack set his bag down, rolling his shoulders back. "Show me what's wrong, and I'll fix it." Lyra and Tikril exchanged glances before Tikril motioned towards a large, cylindrical unit in the center of the room. "We've been having issues with the flux capacitors. Intermittent power losses. We can't pinpoint the malfunction." Jack approached the unit, his fingers brushing over the surface, feeling the vibrations and the heat emanating from within. "You got schematics?" "Right here," Tikril said, passing him a data pad filled with complex diagrams and unfamiliar symbols. Jack studied the schematics, his brow furrowed. "I might need a translator on this. My standard is universal, but these symbols are new to me." "We'll assist," Lyra assured, signaling to another crew member, a humanoid with 6 eyes. "This is Grax. He's excellent with languages and tech." Grax nodded, his eyes blinking asynchronously. "Happy to assist, Jack." Together, the group dove into the problem, discussing possible failure points and testing various components. Jack's hands moved with a precision that earned him cautious looks of respect from the alien crew. As they worked, Jack asked questions about the ship and its missions. Vex Thor, who had been observing from the sidelines, joined in, explaining their exploratory missions and the delicate balance of maintaining such a diverse crew. "Your experience with human technology could bring new perspectives," Vex Thor said, his tone warmer than before. "Diversity in thought as much as in species." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of opportunity and challenge. "I'm here to learn and help as much as I can." The session stretched for hours, and as shifts changed, Jack remained, engrossed in the work. By the time they isolated the fault, a minor but critical calibration error, he had begun to form a tentative bond with his new colleagues. As the crew dispersed, Lyra remained, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Not bad for your first day, Jack. Maybe you'll make a fine addition after all." Jack laughed, wiping his brow. "Thanks, Lyra. I guess we'll see, won't we?" Returning to his quarters, Jack felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. He was far from home, surrounded by the unknown, yet something about the Stargazer felt right, like he was where he was supposed to be. The hum of the Stargazer was a constant background noise, a soothing balm to the ears of its crew. However, on Jack's third day, that familiar hum stuttered, an auditory cue that something was amiss. The lights flickered, and the gravity stabilizers waned, sending a ripple of concern through the vessel. Jack was in the mess hall with Grax and Tikril, sharing a meal, when the anomaly occurred. They exchanged glances, The universal sign of engineer alertness kicking in. Did you feel that? Jack asked, already rising from his seat. Grax's 6 eyes widened in alert. Yes, it seems like a power fluctuation. Not good. Tikril grunted, dropping his utensil. Let's go. This could be serious. The trio hurried through the corridors to the engine room, where alarms had started to blare softly. Lyra was already there, analyzing data on a screen with another crew member, Zantho, who specialized in electrical systems. What's the situation? Jack asked as he approached Lyra. Lyra pointed at the main console. We're losing power intermittently. It's affecting life support systems. Not critical yet, but it will be if we can't stabilize it. Zantho, a slender figure with wiry arms, turned to them. I think the issue might be with the secondary power conduits. They've been problematic before. Jack nodded. Let's start there. Show me the schematics, and we can run diagnostics to pinpoint the failure. As Zantho brought up the diagrams, Jack and Tikril leaned over the console, their heads close together as they discussed potential fault areas. See this junction here? Tikril pointed. If we're getting fluctuations, it could be a short or a break in the conduit. Let's trace it, Jack suggested. If we can isolate the section, we can reroute or replace it. The group divided tasks. Grax and Zantho started on diagnostics. Lyra coordinated with the bridge to keep them apprised of the situation, and Jack and Tikril suited up to manually inspect the conduits. In the narrow maintenance corridor outside the engine room, Jack and Tikril moved with a practiced ease, their tools floating beside them in zero gravity. They removed panels and checked connections, each man working in a silent agreement of urgency. Here, Jack said finally, his voice echoing slightly through their comm units. Found a scorched section. Looks like an electrical arc caused some damage. Tikril floated over, his movements precise. Good catch. I'll get the replacement parts. Can you start prepping the area? Sure thing, Jack replied. He set to work, removing the damaged conduit with careful twists of his tools. Meanwhile, Grax and Zantho communicated their findings through the ship's internal comm system. We've isolated the fluctuations to Sector 6. It's definitely the damaged conduit Jack found, Grax reported. Back in the engine room, Lyra updated the captain over the comm. We've located the problem and are fixing it now. We should have the systems stabilized shortly. As Jack installed the new conduit, he felt the ship's hum return to normal, the vibrations through the hull evening out. I think that's got it, he called out. Tikril, returning with the last of the needed tools, nodded in approval. Seems like it. Let's seal this up and run a full systems check. With the conduit replaced and the panels reattached, the crew regrouped in the engine room to monitor the restart. The lights steadied, and the life support systems hummed back to full capacity. Nice work, everyone, Lyra said, relief evident in her tone. Especially you, Jack. You're proving to be quite indispensable. Jack grinned, wiping his brow. Just doing my job. But it's good to know I'm making a difference. The crew shared a moment of camaraderie, their collective efforts having averted a potential disaster. As they dispersed to return to their duties, Jack felt a sense of belonging. He was no longer just the human engineer aboard an alien vessel. He was a vital member of the Stargazer's crew. Early next morning, while most of the crew were still in their quarters, Jack was already in the engine room. He was deeply engrossed in calibrating the newly installed power conduit, making sure it integrated seamlessly with the ship's older systems. He wanted no repeats of yesterday's scares. Grax joined him soon after, his tool belt clinking softly in the quiet of the engine room. Morning, Jack. How's the conduit holding up? Looks stable, Jack replied without looking up from his console. I'm running a secondary diagnostic to double-check the load capacities. We don't want any surprises. Grax floated over to a nearby panel and started his own checks. I'll monitor the power output from here. Let's make sure everything's in sync. As they worked, Tikril entered, a mug of steaming liquid in his hand. He handed another to Jack, who took it with a nod of thanks. Thought you might need this, Tikril said, his voice gruff but friendly. Much appreciated, Jack said, taking a sip. The warm drink was a strange but pleasant concoction, nothing like coffee but invigorating all the same. Let me take a look at those diagnostics with you, Tikril suggested, peering over Jack's shoulder at the readouts. Everything seems to be holding steady. Jack pointed at the screen. See this spike here, though? Happens every few cycles. It's minor, but I want to trace it. Let's trace the entire line. Then, Grax chimed in, joining them at the console. Better to cover all our bases. The trio set about their task with a focused intensity, moving from one station to another, checking connections and rechecking the data as they went. It was meticulous work, requiring precision and patience. As they worked, Zondho appeared, his eyes scanning the room. "Morning, everyone. How's the power grid holding?" "Just chasing a ghost in the machine," Jack replied, half joking. "You want in on the fun?" "Sure," Zondho said, rolling up his sleeves. "Let's see if we can exorcise it for good." With Zondho's help, they expanded their diagnostics. Jack appreciated the crew's expertise and was quickly learning from them, just as they were from him. It wasn't just about making repairs. It was about improving the system, making it more robust. Their efforts continued well into the shift, their teamwork seamless. They occasionally broke the concentration with light banter or shared insights into their respective cultures' technology. Jack found these exchanges both enlightening and amusing, adding a layer of camaraderie to the work. Finally, Jack tapped the screen with a satisfied nod. There. Caught it. A fluctuation in the backup reactor's output. It's tiny but enough to cause those spikes. Good catch, Jack, Tikril said with a grunt of approval. Let's adjust the output levels. I'll get on it. I'll help, Zondho added. 2 pairs of hands are better than one. Grax looked at Jack, his multiple eyes blinking in a pattern Jack had come to recognize as amusement. You're fitting in just fine, human. What will you surprise us with next? Jack laughed, wiping his hands on a rag. Let's not jinx it. I'm just glad to be part of the team. As they finalized their adjustments, Lyra entered the engine room, her presence commanding and calm. I see we're operational and improving. Excellent work. Jack, your integration into our crew has not only been smooth but beneficial. You have our thanks. Jack nodded, feeling a sense of pride swell within him. Happy to contribute, Captain. It's a team effort, after all. As the crew dispersed back to their stations, Jack stayed behind, looking over the engine room. The heart of the Stargazer was beating strong, thanks to their combined efforts. He felt a deep satisfaction, not just in the work, but in finding his place among the stars, with a crew as diverse as the galaxy itself. Jack stood beside Lyra on the bridge of the Stargazer, observing as the crew navigated through a dense asteroid field. The ship's advanced maneuvering system, though efficient, required manual oversight, a task that brought most of the crew together, coordinating their efforts seamlessly. Stellar cartography really did their job this time, Jack joked lightly, watching a particularly large asteroid drift lazily by on the screen. Lyra chuckled, a sound Jack was hearing more often now. Indeed, but it's the crew's skill that will get us through this. Keep an eye on the thruster outputs, Jack. Any fluctuation could push us off course. On it, Jack replied, moving to a console manned by Zondho, who was monitoring the ship's propulsion systems. How are we looking? Jack asked, peering over Zondho's shoulder at the array of data displayed. Stable for now, but these fields are unpredictable, Zondho responded, his hands flying over the controls with practiced ease. Having an extra pair of eyes helps. Jack nodded, his attention divided between the console readouts and the view from the bridge windows. Every now and then, he'd suggest a minor adjustment, which Zondho implemented without question. The trust they had built over the past few weeks was evident in their smooth collaboration. Meanwhile, Tikril and Grax joined them, carrying reports from the engine room. Thrusters are holding up well, no signs of stress fractures from the maneuvers, Tikril announced, handing a tablet to Jack. That's good to hear, Jack said, reviewing the report quickly. Let's keep monitoring the stress levels, though. Better safe than sorry. Grax, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. I've been tweaking the sensor algorithms to better predict the asteroid's paths. It should give us a few extra seconds to react. Perfect. Let's integrate that into the NAV comm, Jack suggested, already moving towards the navigation station where a young navigator, Kelon, was stationed. Keelan looked up as they approached, his antennae twitching in acknowledgement. Jack, Grax, what do you have for me? Grax has an update for the sensor package. Might make our lives a bit easier, Jack explained, facilitating the exchange of data between Grax and Keelan. Keelan implemented the changes, a smile breaking across his face as the new data started coming in. This is great. Look, we're getting alerts faster than before. As the crew worked, Captain Vex Thor observed from his command chair, a slight smile on his lips. After a few moments, he stood and approached Jack and the others. Your contributions have not gone unnoticed, Jack. Everyone seems to be on their toes a bit more with you around. It's good for the crew, Vex Thor said, clapping Jack on the shoulder. Jack felt a flush of pride. I'm just glad to help where I can, Captain. It's more than help. You're pushing us to be better, Vex Thor added before returning to his seat. With the asteroid field beginning to thin, the crew's tension eased. Jack returned to the console he shared with Zandho, both men allowing themselves a moment of respite. You know, I wasn't sure what to expect when they said a human was joining the crew, Zandho admitted, his tone light. But I'm glad it was you. Jack laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. Thanks, Zandho. Indeed, it is, Zandho confirmed with a nod. And if you ever want to learn about astrogation, I'm willing to trade lessons for some of your engineering knowledge. Deal, Jack agreed, shaking on it. As the ship cleared the last of the asteroids, the crew relaxed and began preparing for the next leg of their journey. Jack's thoughts drifted to Earth, but he felt a strong connection here among the stars with his new crewmates. He was far from home, yet right where he belonged. The cultural exchange evening had been Lyrae's idea, proposed as a way to deepen the crew's understanding of each other's backgrounds. The Stargazer's common room was rearranged to accommodate displays, artifacts, and food items from various crew members' homeworlds. The atmosphere was light, filled with the murmur of intrigued conversations and the occasional laughter. Jack had set up a small booth displaying various Earth technologies and cultural memorabilia. He stood explaining a model of the Apollo lunar module to a curious group, including Tikril and Keelan. So, humans were landing on their moon before they had digital technology? Keelan asked, his antennae tilting in puzzlement. That's right, Jack confirmed, enjoying the incredulity on their faces. It was pretty basic compared to what we have now, but it was groundbreaking back then. Tikril, who was examining a piece of moon rock, grunted in amusement. And I thought my people were reckless. You humans are daring. Jack laughed, daring and a bit of desperation. That's how we advance, isn't it? As the evening progressed, Jack wandered from booth to booth, equally fascinated by the alien cultures. Grax showed him a series of intricate devices used in navigation and communication, explaining the complex principles behind them. These devices can calculate spatial coordinates down to the micron using starlight diffraction, Grax demonstrated, his fingers deftly manipulating the small, shimmering gadgets. That's incredible, Jack marveled, comparing it mentally to Earth technology. Our systems are straightforward in comparison. Zandho, overhearing the conversation, joined in. Maybe you can show us some human tricks then, Jack? Ever think about integrating some of our tech with yours? I'd like that, Jack said, intrigued by the idea. There's a lot we could learn from each other. Next, Jack found himself at a booth manned by Vex Thor, who was showcasing military insignias and medals from various campaigns. Despite the peaceful mission of the Stargazer, the decorations spoke of a warrior culture deeply proud of its achievements. These are impressive, Jack noted, examining a medal adorned with gem-like details. Each one tells a story, huh? Indeed, Vex Thor replied, his voice carrying a note of pride. They are symbols of honor and duty, much like your own military traditions. Jack nodded, feeling a connection. My grandfather was in the military. He had a few medals, too. Never as elaborate as these, but he was proud of them. The conversation shifted to more personal stories, with Vex Thor and Jack sharing tales of their families. This personal connection was unexpected but welcome, revealing the similarities in their values despite the vast differences in their cultures. Later, as the evening wound down, Jack and a few others gathered around a simulator that Grax had set up to demonstrate a typical flight through a densely populated star system. Want to give it a try? Grax offered, gesturing to the controls. Jack hesitated, then grinned. Why not? Let's see if I can fly as well as I fix. The simulation was challenging, but Jack managed to navigate through it with some coaching from Grax and the others. His successful run drew cheers from the onlookers, enhancing the camaraderie among them. After the simulation, the crew congregated to share a meal of diverse dishes. Jack tried various alien cuisines, finding some flavors more palatable than others, much to the amusement of his new friends. This was a great idea, Jack said to Lyra as they shared a dish from her home world. I think we all learned something tonight. Lyra smiled, pleased. That was the goal. And I think it's safe to say you're becoming quite a part of this crew, Jack. Thanks, Lyra, Jack responded, his heart warm with the acceptance and friendship he was finding aboard the Stargazer. As the evening ended, Jack felt not only a deeper understanding of his crewmates' cultures, but also a strengthening bond that he knew would benefit their mission. Jack and CRA found themselves partnered for the upcoming maintenance schedule, tasked with a critical overhaul of the Stargazer's auxiliary power system. They spent the early hours in the cramped quarters of the maintenance bay, tools in hand and diagrams displayed on holographic screens. So, what's first on our list? Jack asked, looking over the schematics with a thoughtful frown. CRA pointed to a section on the hologram. We should start with the capacitor arrays. They've been underperforming, and I suspect a misalignment in the quantum flux regulators. Jack nodded, impressed by her technical acumen. Sounds about right. Let's open it up and take a look. As they worked side by side, their conversation drifted from the technical to the personal. CRA was curious about human engineering techniques, and Jack was equally intrigued by the advanced technologies of CRA's people. You use quantum entanglement for basic power distribution? That's advanced, Jack said, his voice tinged with respect as he adjusted his tool settings. CRA laughed softly. It's standard practice where I come from, but I've learned a lot from your direct and practical approach. It's refreshing. Their hands occasionally brushed as they passed tools back and forth, each touch sparking a subtle charge in the air. Jack was aware of a growing rapport, something beyond professional respect. Got it, CRA exclaimed as the misaligned component clicked into place. Good call on the recalibration. Jack smiled. Teamwork. As the shift ended, they cleaned up their workspace, lingering in the quiet of the maintenance bay. CRA turned to Jack, her expression thoughtful. Jack, would you like to join me for a meal? My quarters have a view of the nebula we're passing soon. It's supposed to be beautiful. Jack was surprised but pleased. I'd like that, CRA. Thank you. Later that evening, Jack arrived at CRA's quarters. The promised view was indeed breathtaking, the vibrant colors of the nebula painting streaks across the viewport. CRA had prepared a simple meal, something that reminded Jack a bit of Earth cuisine, but with exotic flavors he couldn't quite place. They ate slowly, conversation flowing easily. Jack found himself sharing more than he usually did, talking about his family back on Earth, his dreams, and even his fears. CRA listened intently, her gaze steady. It's not easy, being so far from home. But you bring so much to us, Jack. Your strength and your laughter. Jack felt a warmth spread through him at her words. It's easier with someone to share it with, he admitted, looking into her eyes. The meal ended, but they remained at the table, talking into the hours of the artificial night. Eventually, CRA stood, stretching her limbs gracefully. Would you like to see something special? She asked, a mysterious smile playing on her lips. Curious, Jack nodded, and CRA led him to a small room he hadn't noticed before. Inside was a holographic projector. She activated it, and suddenly they stood on a virtual beach, the sound of waves crashing gently in the background. It's a simulation of my home world's ocean, CRA explained. I come here to think. Jack was mesmerized. It's beautiful, CRA. Thank you for showing me. They walked along the virtual beach, talking softly. When CRA stopped, she turned to face him, her expression serious. Jack, I think there's something between us. More than just crewmates. Jack's heart raced. He had felt it too, this growing connection that was both exciting and terrifying. CRA. But before he could finish, CRA stepped closer, her hand reaching up to touch his cheek. The gesture was simple but intimate, bridging the last of the distance between them. Jack leaned in, his own hand coming up to cup her face, and their lips met in a kiss that was tentative at first but grew deeper, driven by the emotions that had been simmering between them. As they pulled apart, breathless, Jack whispered, "I've felt it too." The virtual waves continued to crash as they stood there, holding each other, the stars of Saray's home shining down on them, a newfound intimacy blooming in the simulated twilight. The shift from colleagues to something more had been almost seamless for Jack and CRA, their newfound closeness becoming the talk of the stargazer, whispered amongst the crew with a mix of curiosity and subtle approval. Their time together grew, filled not just with tasks, but with shared moments that stretched long into the artificial nights of the spaceship. One evening, after completing a particularly complex upgrade on the navigation systems, CRA turned to Jack with a playful challenge in her eyes. "I bet you can't beat me in a zero-gravity toolkit race," she said, a smirk playing on her lips. "You're on," Jack replied with a grin, thrilled by the challenge. They set up the course in one of the cargo bays, floating markers defining the path they would navigate while exchanging and using various tools along the way. As they floated, maneuvering through the course with laughter and light-hearted taunts, Jack realized how deeply he had fallen into the rhythm of life aboard the Stargazer with CRA by his side. They completed the course, CRA winning by mere seconds, her laughter echoing in the large space. "All right, you win this round," Jack conceded, as they floated near one of the cargo bay's viewing ports, the galaxy sprawling majestically beyond. CRA bumped her shoulder against his playfully. "I always knew I would." Their laughter faded into a comfortable silence, both of them staring out at the stars. Then, quite naturally, CRA's hand found Jack's, their fingers intertwining effortlessly. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Jack, being with you like this? It's something I didn't anticipate but now can't imagine being without," CRA confessed softly. Jack squeezed her hand, his heart full. "I feel the same, CRA. There's nowhere else I'd rather be." In response, CRA pulled him closer, and their lips met in a kiss, deeper and more assured than before. When they parted, Jack stroked her cheek, feeling the smooth texture of her skin under his fingertips. "Come with me," CRA whispered, leading him back through the corridors to her quarters, their hands still clasped, a silent promise hanging between them. Inside her room, they kissed again, this time with a sense of urgency and passion that had been building between them. Their hands explored, learning the contours of each other's bodies through their uniforms. Slowly, they helped each other out of their clothes, their touches growing bolder. Jack marveled at the contrast of Saray's soft skin against the hardness of his own, the sensation new and thrilling. CRA guided his hands, showing him how to touch her, where she was sensitive. Her breaths became quicker, her every sigh urging him closer. They moved together to the bed, their bodies entwining as they continued to explore each other. Every kiss and every touch deepened their connection, their closeness erasing the vastness of space outside. After, lying side by side, CRA traced patterns on Jack's chest with her finger, her movements slow and thoughtful. "Jack," she began hesitantly, "what we have is special, but it's also complicated. We're from different worlds." Jack turned to face her, his hand coming up to pause her tracing. "I know it's not simple, CRA, but whatever this is, let's just take it one day at a time. Right here with you, it feels right. Let's not worry about the future just yet." CRA smiled, her usual confidence returning. "One day at a time," she agreed, her voice soft. They fell asleep holding each other, the stars continuing their ancient passage outside, indifferent to the human and alien finding solace in each other's arms aboard the drifting spaceship. As the Stargazer's mission drew to a close, the energy among the crew shifted. There was a sense of accomplishment, but also an undercurrent of uncertainty about what came next, especially for Jack. He stood by the main viewport in the observation deck, watching as stars streaked past, contemplating the journey that had changed him more deeply than he'd ever expected. CRA joined him, her presence immediately comforting. "You're quiet today," she observed, leaning against the railing next to him. Just thinking about the future, Jack admitted. We're heading back to the central hub, and from there. His voice trailed off on shore. CRA nodded, her hand finding his. And from there, decisions will be made. I've been offered a position on the research vessel Orinox, exploring the outer systems. It's a great opportunity. Jack felt a pang of worry at the thought of being apart. That sounds incredible, CRA. Really? He tried to keep his tone positive, but his concern must have shown through. And you? Any plans? CRA asked gently, squeezing his hand. Captain Vexthor mentioned there might be a liaison position open. Something about integrating human technology with allied species. It could mean returning to Earth, Jack explained, the weight of each word sinking in. They stood in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts about the future. Finally, CRA spoke, her voice steady. Jack, whatever happens, what we've shared. It's been more than I could have hoped for. Jack turned to face her, his decision clear in his mind. I don't want to lose this, Sarah. I'm going to apply for any position that keeps me on the move. If I can stay in space, maybe we could make it work. CRA's smile was all the answer he needed. I was hoping you'd say that. I'll talk to my contacts. There's always a need for good engineers on research missions. Encouraged, Jack felt a surge of optimism. Then let's make it a plan. We'll figure out a way to be together, no matter where we're stationed. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Tikril and Grax, who came bearing good news of their own. Hey, you two, guess what? We've just received commendations for our work this cycle. The entire crew is being recognized, Tikril announced proudly, handing over the digital commendations. That's fantastic, Jack exclaimed, feeling a burst of pride for the crew and their accomplishments. Grax chuckled, his eyes twinkling. Seems like they're particularly impressed with the human touch you brought to our operations, Jack. The group laughed, and the mood lightened considerably. They spent the next hour discussing their adventures and mishaps aboard the Stargazer, the camaraderie evident in their easy banter. As the gathering ended and the crew members dispersed, Captain Vexthor approached Jack and CRA. I've heard about your plans, he said, his tone approving. It's good to see such dedication. The Coalition appreciates flexible minds. I'll support your applications personally. Thank you, Captain. That means a lot to us both, Jack said gratefully. CRA added, we're grateful for the opportunities we've had here. It's been more than a mission. It's been a home. As they left the observation deck together, Jack felt a deep sense of contentment. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was also full of possibilities. With CRA by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. They walked hand in hand back to their quarters, the stars outside no longer distant and cold, but warm with the promise of new adventures together.